A British woman named Lindsay Hawker vanished in Tokyo. Days later, police found her body buried in a bathtub, wrapped in plastic, covered in sand. The suspect, unemployed, socially withdrawn, yet living in a private apartment his wealthy parents paid for, just outside Tokyo. He went on the run, changed his name, changed his face, and for nearly 3 years, no one could find him. Lindsay Ann Hawker was 22, a bright, ambitious British woman from Coventry. She'd come to Japan in 2006 to teach English through a well-known language school, Nova. She loved the culture. She loved the people. She was planning to return to university. In March 2007, Lindsay was cycling home from a cafe near Jotoku Station in Tokyo when she was approached by a man. He introduced himself as Tatsuya Ichihashi. He told her he wanted to learn English. She declined, but he persisted and followed her all the way to her apartment. There, he asked for a glass of water. Lindsay agreed, but only after seeing that her roommates were home. He came inside for just a few minutes, pulled out a notebook. As they spoke, he began sketching her face, methodical, without saying much. Then he left. On the page, a portrait of Lindsay Hawker, and beneath it, his name, phone number, and address. A few days later, they arranged a private English lesson, something many Nova teachers often did on the side. On March 25, 2007, Lindsay visited Ichihashi's apartment in Ichikawa, a city east of Tokyo. She was never seen alive again. So who was Tatsuya Ichihashi? From the outside, he looked like a typical upper-middle-class young man. Born in 1979, only child. His father was a medical doctor at a local hospital in Chiba, and his mother was a professional dentist. They were wealthy, educated. Those who knew him described him as soft-spoken, shy, not many friends, not much conversation, just quiet and distant. After graduating from Chiba University with a degree in horticulture, Ichihashi drifted. He never pursued a career, never held down a real job. In his 20s, while others were building their futures, he seemed to press pause. He spent his days in a spacious apartment in Ichikawa, a place fully paid for by his wealthy parents. They gave him a monthly allowance, enough to live comfortably, without needing to do much of anything. He didn't work. He rarely left home. He barely spoke to neighbors. And yet, he had a girlfriend. They had been dating for some time before the murder. She later cooperated with the investigation and was cleared of any involvement. No one around him suspected what he was capable of, not even her. To outsiders, he looked like just another quiet, privileged young man. But beneath that surface was a man slowly losing touch with the world around him. There were early signs of troubling behavior. While in university, Ichihashi was reportedly warned by police after stalking a female student. But the incident never made it into any official record and was quietly forgotten. It was a warning sign, one that slipped through the cracks. No charges, no record, just a quiet reminder of what he was already capable of. And on that March day, he acted. Lindsay was last seen entering Ichihashi's apartment on March 25th. What happened next was horrifying. According to forensic reports, she was sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. She was expected to return to work the next day, but never showed up. Her roommates and colleagues grew concerned. She hadn't contacted anyone. She hadn't come home. Her employer, Nova, alerted the police. Detectives traced her last known movements to Ichihashi's apartment in Ichikawa. Inside, Lindsay had already been dead for hours. Ichihashi placed her naked body in the bathtub, covered it with soil and sand, and added gardening enzymes, likely in an attempt to accelerate decomposition. Some reports even mentioned small seed-like particles scattered on top, though that detail was never officially confirmed. Then, as if nothing had happened, he left the apartment. Surveillance footage shows him buying more soil, while Lindsay's body lay in the bathroom. Inside, he had already lined the floor with plastic sheeting. He sealed the bathroom with tape, trying to contain the smell of death. 2 days later, on March 27th, police arrived at his door. They knocked. They asked questions. They requested to step inside. That's when he ran, barefoot, down the stairs, out of sight. There were 2 officers, but they weren't prepared. They had no warrant to search the premises, no backup, and crucially, no radios. When Ichihashi ran, they gave chase, but couldn't coordinate. They split up. They lost sight of him within minutes. One officer tried to call for help using a cell phone, but by then it was too late. Ichihashi sprinted down a fire escape and disappeared into the streets of Tokyo. And just like that, Japan's most wanted man was gone. The case quickly became national news in Japan and a headline story across the UK. Lindsay's grieving parents, Bill and Julia Hawker, immediately flew to Japan despite the language barrier and cultural distance. They held press conferences alongside embassy officials. They appeared on Japanese television, standing silently with photos of their daughter, asking the public to help bring her killer to justice. They handed out flyers in train stations, approached strangers with Lindsay's photo. They visited police stations, pressed for updates, and worked with both Japanese and British media, doing everything they could to keep her name alive. Their quiet determination touched the Japanese public. Many were moved by the image of 2 foreign parents navigating an unfamiliar country, refusing to leave until their daughter's voice was heard. Lindsay's death wasn't just another case in the news. In Japan and the UK, people followed every update. What followed was one of the most intense manhunts in modern Japanese history. Ichihashi's face was everywhere, on wanted posters, in newspapers, on nightly news broadcasts. A nationwide alert was issued. Police set up roadblocks. Still, he vanished. He didn't flee the country. He didn't hide in the mountains. Instead, Ichihashi disappeared into Japan's underbelly, blending into the world of low-wage, transient labor. For nearly 3 years, he drifted from city to city, Osaka, Fukuoka, Nagoya, working under fake names, on construction sites, at port warehouses, in demolition zones. He took jobs where no one asked questions, where workers changed daily. He slept in capsule hotels and internet cafes, ate cheap meals from convenience stores. At one job site, he stayed longer than usual. One afternoon, he overheard coworkers talking about the Lindsay Hawker case. His name wasn't mentioned, but the fear hit instantly. That night, he packed his things and disappeared again. From then on, he never stayed anywhere for more than a few days. Staying invisible meant staying alive. Never spoke unless spoken to. Never stayed long. Always alone. Always invisible. But Ichihashi wasn't just hiding. He was trying to erase himself, starting with his own face. Alone in cheap motel rooms and public restrooms. Using scissors and a box cutter, he cut into his eyelids, trying to create a crease to make his eyes appear larger. He slashed his nose to narrow its shape. Even his lips were cut, reportedly in an attempt to change their contour. No anesthesia, no medical training, just a mirror, some gauze, and desperation. The result wasn't transformation. It was mutilation. He left deep scars, uneven features, and swelling that never fully faded. He was trying to erase the face that could get him caught, cutting away the features that made him recognizable. But even that wasn't enough. He wasn't finished. Then, in 2009, he took it a step further. He visited a plastic surgery clinic in Osaka, paid in cash, wore a hat low over his face, and told the staff he wanted cosmetic changes for personal reasons. In Japan, private clinics don't always require ID for cosmetic surgeries, especially when patients pay out of pocket. So no one checked his identity. No red flags. Doctors performed extensive procedures. His jaw was reshaped, his nose altered, and his eyes surgically modified. At first, no one suspected a thing, but one of the clinic's staff later grew suspicious. His behavior was strange. nervous, overly guarded, and his requests were excessive. He wanted multiple facial features altered in one session: eyes, nose, jawline. He was obsessed with changing his entire appearance. And when Ichihashi failed to return for a scheduled follow-up, the clinic notified police. Investigators obtained the surgery details and made a bold move. They created a digital reconstruction of what he might now look like post-surgery. It wasn't a photo, it was a guess, based on scars, swelling, and surgical notes. It aired on national news. For the first time, the public wasn't just looking for his old face. They were looking for who he had become. And it worked. Several weeks later, a ferry terminal employee in Osaka noticed a man who looked eerily similar to the newly released composite. He was buying a ticket to Okinawa, a place far enough to disappear again. When police approached, Ichihashi didn't run. He stayed calm, made no scene. Inside his bag, they found a wig, a detailed map, and over 100,000 yen in cash. He had been preparing to vanish once more. At the police station, his demeanor shocked officers. He was polite, cooperative, almost eerily composed. He gave no resistance, no emotion, just silence. The arrest triggered a media firestorm. In the UK, Lindsay Hawker's murder had already become a symbol of the risks foreign women face abroad. In Japan, the reaction was shock, anger. How had a known suspect disappeared for more than 2 years, right under their noses? During questioning, Ichihashi offered a different version of events. He claimed he never intended to kill Lindsay Hawker. According to him, a disagreement escalated, then turned physical. He claimed that during a struggle, he held her down to stop her from leaving. While doing that, he panicked and lost control. He said he didn't notice she had stopped breathing until it was already too late to save her. He even claimed to have attempted mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but there was no call for help, and instead of reporting her death, he hid the body. Investigators didn't believe it was panic, because what they found told a different story. He had bought soil, plastic sheets, tools to conceal a body. This wasn't a crime of panic. It was preparation. Inside his apartment, investigators uncovered a disturbing pattern. Magazines featuring foreign women, crude sketches of women being watched, notebooks filled with observations, routes, behaviors, physical descriptions. He had been following women before. Psychiatrists later described him as emotionally numb, socially stunted, and deeply obsessed with control. They believed his attack on Lindsay wasn't spontaneous. It had been building, a fantasy, played out in real life. Lindsay's murder wasn't random. It had been premeditated, part of a disturbing pattern. Lindsay may not have been his first target, but she was the one who didn't make it out. While in custody, Ichihashi did something that stunned the public. He wrote a memoir titled Until I Was Caught. The 270-page book detailed his years on the run, the jobs, the surgeries, the paranoia, the loneliness. He described cutting into his own face, living in capsule hotels, evading police. But what he regretted most, he wrote, was getting caught. Not once did he apologize. There was no expression of guilt. There was no real mention of Lindsay Hawker, just page after page about his own suffering. To Lindsay's parents, the book was a second trauma. They called it a second violation, an insult, a cruel attempt to rewrite the narrative with their daughter erased from the center of it. And yet, it became a bestseller in Japan. The publisher claimed it had value as a social document, but to many, it was a chilling reminder of how easily a killer's voice can drown out his victims. In July 2011, Tatsuya Ichihashi stood trial for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, observers, supporters of the Hawker family, and Ichihashi, stoic, silent, wearing a suit. Prosecutors argued for the death penalty. They said it was a premeditated, brutal killing, followed by a calculated cover-up and years of evasion. The defense claimed it wasn't premeditated, that Lindsay's death was accidental, that Ichihashi had panicked, that he regretted everything. But the evidence was overwhelming. He lured her to his apartment by asking for an English lesson. But that wasn't what he wanted. After killing her, he left the body there. Surveillance footage showed him carrying the supplies back, while Lindsay lay lifeless just a few feet away. On July 21, 2011, the Chiba District Court found Tatsuya Ichihashi guilty of rape resulting in death, unlawful confinement, and abandonment of a corpse. He was sentenced to life in prison. Lindsay Hawker's parents were present in Japan for the verdict. Outside the courtroom, they gave a statement to the press, thanking the Japanese police, the media, and the public for their tireless support. But most of all, they honored their daughter. She was doing what she loved, her father said. She wanted to experience the world, and she did. Ichihashi changed his face. He ran. He rewrote the story in his own words. But her family never stopped telling the truth. Truth doesn't vanish with a passport or a scalpel. In the end, justice found him, and Lindsay's name still echoes louder than his ever will. Share your thoughts below. Thank you for watching Eastern Noir. Subscribe for more true crime stories from the East.